Of the 14 institutions during the year leading up, supposedly, the rumor is $30 million in infrastructure and production gear leading up to the launch, and then, of course, further investment from there. And then responsible for more than 1,000 live events, roughly half on the digital network, half on the linear network, at a minimum of 40 events per school, but obviously it escalated much more than that, as I think a lot of you guys can acknowledge. ESPN and SEC, they laid down 23,000 plus miles of fiber to connect more than 150 SEC venues. So while we have seen installations like this among a lot of the conference networks, this was by far the fastest. I mean, it happened so fast. You guys literally got the alert, and suddenly it just had to happen in, pretty much less than a year. The reason that these guys are up here is we wanted to get a perspective of the varying situations. There were people like Justin in Alabama who had just undergone a huge renovation. He had all kinds of fun toys at his fingertips, and University of Florida as well. And then there were places like Arkansas that threw nearly $10 million at their facility to get up to where they needed to be. So these panelists represent both sides of that. And then we have Jared from Ross Video. Ross was enormous in various ways in terms of making a lot of this happen, getting these guys and their staffs and their students not just up to snuff for gear, but education. I mean, you're talking about a lot of people that are working with entirely new workflows, entirely new technology. So, with year one in the rearview mirror, pretty much, we have a few championships left, but let's go through. We're going to introduce, and Stan, why don't you start out? Introduce yourself, and let's go through a little bit of the infrastructure, technology, what you needed to do leading up to that launch last fall to get this done and make the way for SEC Network.
Hi, I'm Stan Silvey, and I'm from the University of Missouri, and it was kind of easy for us because we didn't have anything. And I say that because we were able to listen to ESPN and take what they wanted us to do and kind of build it from there. So that was kind of nice. And I learned a lot about fiber infrastructure that I'd never thought about before. And so really it was a lot of just the Ross products. We knew that's what we were going to do, and just kind of fitting that into the space we chose to put it.
Sure. Justin, like I mentioned, before the announcement came out, you guys had just had a huge investment in your facility. So maybe talk a little bit about what happened on Crimson Tide Productions, and then how that led into what you need to do for SEC.
Well, first, let me say I'm sitting next to my friend Andy here from Auburn, and I just want to say, since we're in the state of Georgia, it's okay. If we were in Alabama, it would be a problem.
That's what this conference does. It brings people together.
That's
we
right,
really could bring peace to the Middle East at this session.
But anyway, we had undergone a huge renovation, as you said, built a digital media center, as we call it. Multiple control rooms, multiple studios. We built it with the future in mind, in hopes that we would either do some regional productions or we'd go this road with the SEC Network. And so, we had to build another control room to offset some of the current productions that we were doing, and so we did that. We already had a larger control room built, but we built a second, smaller control room, added, all the equipment associated with that, and added staffing, which I think was a big part of it. But as I said earlier, just having the expandability and opening that second control room was really our biggest piece, and it made it a little bit easier for us, I think, because we had already gone through all that, but so we could focus more on the productions, but it was still a huge undertaking.
Right. Andy, where were you guys at before the launch, and what did you guys have to get done?
We basically started similar to Stan from scratch. We had an existing room, but that was decided before I even came on board. Hey, we may use it as a second room. We ultimately decided to abandon that room, and just our administration went all out and said, hey, we're going to renovate a building, put 2 production rooms in there, and just go full scale, do everything that we possibly can. We spent, I think, $2.5 million just connecting all our facilities with fiber. Know way more about fiber. As Stan mentioned, than I ever thought I'd know. When you have, I think we have 9 facilities connected through fiber on campus. So we were in a good position in the sense that we got to start from scratch, a bad position in that we did not complete those rooms until the middle of December. And our busiest months of the year were January, February, where we did, I think, over 100 live events between SEC Network and our video board productions from those rooms. So it was kind of thrown to the fire, get into it. But you know, I liked starting from scratch and building everything from the ground up.
Sure. And Bennie, what about you?
Well, we're in kind of a unique position. We had a control room in place because we put in a big video board at our football stadium. So we had that in place. It was an HD control room, and we had some fiber connectivity on campus already because of the streaming requirements for baseball. So I think for us, once ESPN came in and established their minimum standards and what they needed from us, we just basically built from there. We added a few more production pieces to our control room, and fiber connected all of the venues. And like the guys have said before me, I know more about fiber now than I ever thought I would. But it's been good to us to be able to link to all the facilities, not only for the SEC Network productions, but also for our video boards as well.
Sure. And we'll get into some of those juggling acts that you guys have to do for the in-venue as well as
Right.
the SEC Network shows. Jared, like I said, Ross played a huge part at various campuses as well as with ESPN on this and mobile facilities as well. Just give us a little overview about the role you guys played leading up to the launch, and then we can get into how that's evolved in a little bit.
Well, with the SEC Network, it's kind of humbling. We are a big part of the production values, but compared to how huge the initiative was, the fiber and all the other massive amounts of things they had to worry about were it's just very impressive feat. So we come in towards the end to actually do, I want to consider it training more so production ESPN launch training, where we're basically showing them how to produce those shows. And if they need advanced training on our products, we come back later to show all the neat features and things like that. But before that, we generally do an audit on data. So we'll go over, we did a clock and score survey, multi-tab spreadsheet, trying to document every venue, see what we have to do for gymnastics, for diving, swimming, all these interesting different clock and score connections, since we do the score bug as well as insert graphics and clips. And so once that was out of the way, we kind of knew what we were getting into, and it was a very traditional type of launch, similar to what we would do at ESPN3. The only difference was there's a lot of state institutions and the budgeting and everything. Everyone was right up against the deadline, so it was kind of chaotic from a timing perspective, but we seemed to have enough trainers to kind of keep up with it.
Sure. I think the moral of this whole story is half this event is about trying to convince your bosses how to give you money, right? If you tell them that the conference is going to double their revenue, that's all you need to do. So just tell your bosses that your revenue is going to double from your TV payout, and that's fine, right? Especially in Stan and Andy's case, right? They were just like, oh, here's all the money you need because we know we're going to have more in the back. So coming out of that, right, we have year one under our belts. It didn't go as planned in some ways and went exactly as planned in some ways, I'm sure. So we'll go right back down the line and tell me a little bit about how it's evolved since day one, and maybe some unforeseen challenges that you did not expect in terms of the pre-planning and stuff. So Stan, go ahead.
Well, it's gone remarkably well for us. As I said, we weren't really doing productions, or at least multi-camera with announcers and graphics and clock and score. So I was pleasantly surprised, I guess, in some ways, and pleased, and a lot of that had to do with some of the folks I hired to help us do the work, which I didn't mention before, which is a big part of when we got going. We had 2 full-time employees when we found out about this, and so obviously we had to expand. But I knew it was going to be very hard. It was a lot harder than I thought. A lot more, the time commitment was a lot. I knew it would be a lot. It was a lot more. So that was kind of something that, you know, it would come in waves. I'm sure everyone, like, it seemed okay, and then all of a sudden it was overwhelming. And but we've all made it through. Just the level of the ability of the whole project to be able to, for ESPN's platforms to be able to look in, and I know when we were doing softball, was it last weekend? I can't even remember. But we'd look up and we'd be on ESPN, and and so those kind of things were surprising, pleasantly, but then it's scary that your announcers are up and those kind of things. And then the ability, I thought that what I asked our integrators to do was build something that could be a broadcast facility. And I thought, okay, in a year, we're going to do a TV game maybe or two. And we ended up doing, I think, 13 television games. Our first was in November. And so that was a little, it sped up. And so those were the surprising things that were great, but also very scary.
Right. It's a snowball effect in both a positive and not negative manner, but yeah, it definitely builds
Stress
and
level.
builds. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Justin, what about you?
Well, I think we learned, a couple things. One is these productions are a lot of work, just a lot of research, and if you're getting into a game, a production is only as good as the amount of time you put into it. And so we learned that very quickly. Looking back on our first production, we were all super nervous and it was crazy, but now we feel very comfortable and we can focus on making those shows better, which I think is a huge plus. Another thing that came out of year one, I think, was just relationships with these guys and all of our counterparts in the SEC, which was something that hadn't really been in place before. We had our cliques, so to speak. Maybe it was the SEC West and the SEC East. I don't know, but I feel comfortable calling any one of these guys saying, "Hey, have you run into
Even
this
Andy?
problem?"
You sure?
Even Andy, yeah.
Okay.
We trade incognito periscopes every once in a while, but just kidding. No, I think, like I said, I feel comfortable calling any of these guys and saying, "Hey, have you run into this problem? How did you handle it?" And then, just the money situation and educating your administration, things like that, bouncing ideas off these guys, helping with that really helps, just trying to get through the year and working through those problems.
Right. And Andy, you were even more unique than some of these guys in that you were new, obviously, to the position and the existing infrastructure wasn't really there. So what happened in year one, and I'm sure you learned a lot.
Yes, I learned more than I ever thought I would learn. The biggest thing was, you mentioned the money. It felt like every day I was going back and asking for more money, and I guess I'm kind of looked at as the guy who spent a lot of money this year, but hopefully in the long term that pays off. But one of the biggest challenges was, as we were building this, thinking, hey, down the road, this will be, as Stan mentioned, a broadcast facility, but it happened immediately, and to the tune of, hey, ESPN coming, hey, can you do all the basketball games? So kind of figuring out what we could do and then adjusting on the fly, retrofitting a room we were building to then do a linear broadcast on ESPNU, ESPN2, SEC Network, and things from the video board mindset that I had never thought of, like mix minus. Okay, we need mix minus so the announcers can hear the studio, and we can toss back and forth, and just things that that weren't on our radar, certainly are now, and just fixing those as problems as they came up. But to the credit of the administration, if I asked for something, I usually got it, and we would have it the next game, which is crazy at a university level to think that we did probably 2 years worth of build-up in 6 months. Went from several outside groups that were doing an outstanding job, and a lot of those individuals came on board to work with us. But the initial staff we had went from 7 full-time people to where at the end of the year we're now at 13. So we just keep growing and growing and growing, and you think it's going to stop, and it doesn't stop. So certainly challenging, but definitely rewarding to get through that first year and say, hey, we're still standing and we're better for it, and looking forward to the second year.
And a lot of those additions, I'm sure, have to do with educating your administration, kind of like Justin said. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But Bennie, what were lessons learned from year one for you?
A couple, not many. I would say that really from the beginning, once the SEC and ESPN made the announcement, which was, I believe, maybe 2 years from this month, that they would create this network, the ball started rolling. And I remember the first phone call I got right after the announcement was made was from a guy named Rex Aarons, who's in the audience here today. And he said, hey, we need to talk. Little did I know how my life would change after that phone conversation. So Rex and a great team from ESPN, Scott Hecht, Brady, Adam, came down and spent a few days with us and really filled us in on the technical side of what ESPN had agreed to with the Southeastern Conference, because I think before that conversation, most of it was really at the conference level, maybe with the presidents, maybe with the athletic directors, and it was sort of a hush-hush deal, so they didn't really tell us a lot. We knew something was going on, we just didn't know what. But Rex and his group came down, did a great assessment, of our facility, told us what we needed to do, where we needed to be, not only from the digital side, but also from the linear side as well for broadcast. Because all of these venues needed to be broadcast ready as well. And that's something that, we don't talk a lot about, but a lot of them needed to be ready for broadcast. We know that football traditionally is going to be, at the top, but what about soccer? What about softball? What about volleyball? So those venues had to be at a broadcast level as well. And I think when Rex and his team came down and did that assessment and created what they call the minimum standards for the digital side, we were able to somewhat play off of that and, get our facilities up to speed for, like I said, broadcast as well. And something we haven't talked a lot about today, we talk a lot about production, but, transmission was involved in that as well. And I can't tell you when the last time I saw a satellite truck at
Right.
Mississippi State, because one of the big parts of the agreement with ESPN was the ability to put in fiber back to Charlotte, and that fiber would be able to handle not only transmission back and forth, to Charlotte, but also phone lines and also high-speed internet. So now when a production truck pulls in, they'll just plug into one of the venue cabinets, and they've got all that access available to them, whether it's the, telephones or the fiber for transmission. So all that had to be put in, and it took us a few months to do it, but probably the biggest challenge early on, once, the assessment was made, by ESPN, was sitting down with the administration and discussing with them budget. What would it cost to buy all the nice, pretty toys we see next door? And convincing them of the fact that that's what we needed to build our facility. And at Mississippi State, where we are now, is we're able to pretty much build off of a current facility that we had to get us, up to a level to do the digital events. But we knew that somewhere down the road that facility would not be good enough for us. Well, at the same time, we were also building a new north end zone, more seats, more premium space, and things like that. So we approached our athletic director and asked him if it would be possible for us to take over part of that space to create basically our new control facility. And he agreed to let us do that. And we, I think just as of last week, just signed a construction agreement that will allow us to build 2 new control rooms, offices, editing areas in that space. So hopefully by this time next year, we will relocate to that facility and be able to do any type of production that ESPN would like for us to do.
Right. So job is very much not finished for you.
No, never finished.
Cool. Jared, what was your guys' role in year one in terms of, like I mentioned, education as well as just making sure, everything worked?
Sure. Well, the primary goal was to get everyone on air and to get them fulfilling their digital tier games. Of course, that evolved into the schools doing linear. Our primary role is, of course, on the production side with graphics and, in most cases, production switchers. We quickly realized after a month or two that there's very few technical support issues. So a lot of the phone calls coming in to our tech support department were more production questions. And so looking back, one of the things we're trying to do now is really build a community and a network and connect everyone at the production level where they can communicate and share tips, and actually provide kind of a production help desk internally. So, Scott at Notre Dame and some other schools, we've had Kyle Lang remote into their systems and modify macros and things because they got to get ready for games. And we realize that our tech support people they're better at fixing something that's completely broken than doing production. So we've kind of modified our approach halfway through the season, made sure we had production resources available to remote in and help people get their programming figured out. So really our role now is kind of evolving into not just providing the technology, but providing a community at the production level so the production folks can connect with each other. So hopefully this summer we get the chance to really put some of these things in place and get a user group going and further kind of staff up our help desk approach.
Sure, yeah, and we'll get into kind of looking forward in a sec, but we touched on it here, but one of the biggest initiatives as part of this thing was student involvement, right? And I mean, that's something that everybody deals with here and everyone tries to get their students as involved as possible, but sometimes there's not the outlets or the resources or the right students, right? I want specifics from each of you guys in terms of students that joined up, the amount that they were working, and maybe even some of the responsibilities that they took on that I would assume would not have been possible without these, 1,000 shows that the conference, was producing this year for the network. Justin, why don't we start with you to mix it up a little bit?
Well, our student program, early in the year I looked at our staff and I said, we need 100 students, and they all looked at me like I was the craziest person on earth. But I think late in the year they agreed with me, and we've gotten to about 80 students, total in our program right now. I think it will grow a little bit bigger in the coming year. But to answer your questions, we use students for almost every digital broadcast in every position except for some of the key positions. It was a little different for linear games, where ESPN sent in a producer, director, that kind of thing. But and we use a lot of students for linear productions too. But for a digital SEC Network Plus game, we would almost the entire production was student driven, with the exception of the producer, director, and so a lot of those students have gotten great experience. We're limited to 20 hours a week per student, and I think every student that we used on the SEC Network crew maxed out those numbers just about every week in the fall and spring. So a lot of great experience for them, and I think we've had a couple students that have done internships at ESPN, which is a big deal. We've had a couple students that have gotten jobs at ESPN as a result of that, and just some of them have, like we just did softball regionals a couple weeks ago, and we did 7 games in 3 days. 4 of those went on 4 different linear networks, and we had a student who was TDing those and did a great job. And that was just a result of the experience over the year and just being prepared for those things. So it's invaluable experience, I feel
Right.
like, for students, and can't really get a better experience anywhere else unless they're working at ESPN.
Sure. And were they, in your case, and I'll ask you guys as well, those 20 hours, paid or academic credit or free T-shirts and hot dogs? Or, I mean, what were they doing it for? And were they reliable? I know that's always the question.
Yeah.
When this is going out to a digital network, it's not like the old days where if they screw up, it's not the worst thing in the world.
I think most of our students, were excited about it, took ownership. We have kind of a tiered approach with our students, and as students get a little more mature in their career, they get moved into some of these bigger productions. And so for us, dependability was an issue at times, but it wasn't always an issue. And to answer your question, we did pay most of our students. Some of them, do it for internship hours and things like that. But I'd say it's about 95% we pay our students because that does make them more dependable, if we pay them. And we do have food for every production, though. That is a key thing, especially with students.
Nobody loves craft services more than college kids.
Right.
Andy, what about you?
Very similar to Justin's setup. I think we're at about 80 students and freelancers right now, which sounds like a lot, but when you do 3 productions in a day, 70 people work. So we're actually light in terms of students and where we need to be. Then we teach 2 classes on campus, so we have another 30 students involved in that. They were heavily involved in our video board shows and coming in and working and kind of the training ground before they moved on to the SEC Network productions. So overall, I think with full-time students and freelance staff, we're at about 120 is where our average kind of is. Obviously, you have some issues that come up when you have that many people, and there's a lot of movement in and out with your numbers. But the biggest thing for us was we had a very strong A group of students. They could come in, they could work every event, they could TD, direct, produce, you name it, they would do it. It was developing that depth. And once we got through February, we started February, we were 1 deep at every position. We ended February, we had 10 people who could do everything. So it was pretty awesome to see that we had all these students who could do that. And then the reward was, come March, April, when we had these linear events, we had, freshmen, sophomores in college sitting in the front row of a truck production, working those events. And not only were they doing the job, but they were doing it extremely well, and to the point at the end of it, directors and producers who've been in the business 20, 30 years saying, hey, that kid can travel with me anytime and come along, and I want to hire them when they graduate. I'm like, well, they've got 3 more years to go. So.
Don't take them away from me that fast. Yeah.
So it's just been, and even a student, I got a student going to work for Bennie now who graduated, and he's going to get another degree at Mississippi State, so he's going to do some work for Bennie, just the relationships of knowing everyone in the conference, and, talk to Justin all the time, so.
Right. Yeah,
We,
that's pretty inspiring. And paid or academic?
It's a mix. If they're in the class, it's academic credit. We have some students who do it for full-time credit, and then most of the students are paid on an event-by-event basis.
And that's going to get even better, obviously, next year. With each passing year, you'll have an even deeper roster. Yeah.
That's the hope.
Sure. Bennie, in your case?
Yeah, for us, we haven't fully developed our student program yet. That's kind of a work in progress for us, but we do have a really great group of what we call A-level students who are working with us. A couple of, I could mention, our number 1 replay guy is a student. Our number 1 A2 is a student, and these are guys that are solid. For every event, they can do it at a broadcast level. They have no issues whatsoever. And I remember working with Scott and our replay guy early on is Scott would always tell him, tell the story. Use your replay system to tell the story. And in no sport is that more evident than it is in baseball. And right now, he's at a point where he could probably go out and do broadcast events. But we've had some students in the past. I think we have one who is at ESPN right now finishing up her internship. She'll be back with us in the fall. We had a student that worked with me who interned at ESPN about a year ago and ended up getting a job in broadcast operations in Bristol. So he's there right now. But I think as this continues to evolve over the next few years, that students will become a huge factor in what we do on a day-to-day basis. I think numbers-wise, with students and freelancers as well, we're probably in the maybe 25 to 30 range. We hope to up that and get a little bit better so that we can create some depth as well.
Sure. And Stan, on your end?
Well, when I found out this was going to happen, I developed a class with the Department of Communication, and that was the initial way we got a few students. When we started, we maybe had 10 students. In August, I think we're probably at 45 or so now, and we need more. And we have students that do a variety of things. Our goal for next year is to kind of cross-train a little bit more, but we have a great student that did replay that will intern with ESPN this summer. A freshman that was directing some things that ended up with live look-ins. And so, yeah, when you do 9 games in 4 days, which we did a couple weeks ago,
Right.
So we have about 65 on the student/freelance payroll, I mean, it's really not enough, because I have a small staff, and we have to do it all, but they don't have to, so they can pick and choose. But we, had students that had never ran a handheld camera, and for basketball, we just put it on their shoulder, and on our first scrimmage, we said, okay.
Deep end of the pool, here we
Yeah,
go.
these are all the things you did wrong, get better. And we were able to develop some students that really shoot well
Cool.
and work through. And so it's been really good for us and a learning experience for us and them. And I also teach a journalism class, so I'm trying to tweak that to kind of poach some talent
Just
there.
insert propaganda to
Right.
make sure to convince them. Yeah.
But yeah, we do pay students if we think they're good enough, and we offer T-shirts and pizza. So
It's the best selling point. It has been for years. It's the oldest thing in the book, right? Jared, I'm curious, number one, you kind of talked about in terms of your guys' role in educating students. Obviously, it's clear, but especially with, Ross Mobile Productions and these kind of things, it's got to be kind of nice for you guys that you have these young up-and-comers that suddenly know how to use a carbonite switcher or expression graphics or that kind of thing. I'm sure that's, you have this up-and-coming sort of Ross team of production crew.
Well, yeah, it's no offense to the traditional freelance market, but I think this initiative has really changed the entire sports industry, because you have these young this young talent pool coming in that's agnostic to technology. They just want to do it. They want to learn, and they're allowing for all this content to be produced. And I think it's been the biggest change in the sports industry, is instead of having, the traditional, there's a truck and there's this freelance pool and everything that gets decided that's in it, and the way it gets done is very static and the same, and now it's just wide open. And so you have this raw talent. We have, personally, we adopted, bringing the students from the colleges and full-timers into our system to help us deploy. You've seen some of them, NBC Sports demands a particular person to direct a show for Ross MP for the NBC Sports college package. It came from a college doing ESPN3. And they demand this director. And so you see careers being made out of the collegiate initiative already, and it's in its infancy stage. And so I really think it blew it wide open. The ability to create more content now to fulfill this new market space is really going to be carried from the initiative and everything that they do with the human resource aspect of it. 'Cause the technology, of course, can be difficult, but it's much easier than building a community, and this community is massive now because of the great work that the universities are doing. And it's, of course, benefited us, but more so I think it's benefiting the industry.
Yeah, I've heard multiple people at ESPN and even at other networks referring to not just SEC, but Pac-12 and Big Ten. Oh, it's like a minor league system at this point. I mean, you really are bringing these people up, and by the time they get to the show, both literally and figuratively, they're going to be much more prepared than they would have been, say, 5 years ago, right? Any questions from the crowd, guys? Got one right over here, and one right over here, and our trusty Michael Sardone has a microphone.
Hey, kind of going back to looking for students to work these games. This is kind of a two-part question. Like when you first need to kind of put the word out there that you did need students, how did you go about? How did you go about kind of putting the word out there, not only so that students know that this opportunity is available, but that you got the right students, so that the people that were coming to you were people who actually wanted to do this, not just people who kind of thought it would be cool and just wanted a job. And the second part is, when you're looking at these students, do you look for anything specific in them that makes you say, yes, I want you, and no, I don't want you?
Well, we do it a few ways. One is we actually try to get students as freshmen so that they can be with us for 4 years, which is a key thing, because when they're done with their 4-year experience, they have 4 years of great experience that they can take out into the workplace and feel like that sets them apart. And so that's a good selling point for recruiting students. But one of the things that we do is we have a couple recruiting events that we do, like Get On Board Day and some of those. We set up a booth. We try to get as many students as we can to fill out an information card. We have an informational meeting after that. We make them fill out a survey. There are a couple different things on the survey. One is related to experience, do you know how to operate a camera, that kind of stuff. The other part of the survey is what we call a super fan survey, which you guys will get a kick out of this. Basically, we determine whether they're a super fan or not, whether they want to, be next to Nick Saban, or whether they want to, actually operate a camera. And so the super fan survey kind of allows us, if they get every question right, then that's a red flag for us. Okay? So, because some of them are not questions that any normal person should know unless you've been a part of our program for a while. So, it's a different approach, but it works for us. And we typically get about 100 students at that informational meeting that come and show up, and we have a pretty aggressive interview process after that, and then we pick about 20 out of that 100 each year, and so each year it cycles out. So.
Anybody else on how to recruit good students?
I was going to say, for me, just personally, I look for work ethic. I don't really look at a student and say, okay, they're a communications major, an engineering major. It really doesn't matter. Like Andy mentioned, I've got a young man who's coming to work with us this fall, and he's a vet student. So I just look for work ethic. Not that all jobs require this, but your ability to do the dirty work. Can you pick up, can you over-under cable? Can you learn how to do it well? I started out as a utility, and most of you who've worked in television and video know what a utility is. And I wanted to learn every aspect of the business, and you learn that by growing in the business. You don't get that when you step right into the business. It just takes time. So that's kind of what I look for in a student. If they come in and they can demonstrate good work ethic, then you think that, hey, they're going to be something.
Sure. Stan?
I'm still working on my over-under technique, but this is kind of obvious, but generally if a student seeks you out,
It's a good contender.
that's a good sign.
Yeah.
And then you just kind of look for people that get it, which is vague, but you give them a chance, you have them utility, and they'll ask you, can I do more? And those are generally the folks that you want to move up and give other chances. So.
Right, just kind of show that buy-in, right? Yeah. Cool. Andy, you good? Anybody else? We got one right here. Sorry, go ahead.
It doesn't hurt having the ESPN logo.
Yeah, I think
and
that, yeah.
I was just at University of Florida on Tuesday, and traditionally production is, at J schools, it's kind of hard to get students to want to do a talking head show and things like that. So I think this has really put a lot of life into, having the ability to put ESPN, SEC Network on your resume has really opened up the production and the student initiative at the colleges beyond what, of course, in-venue shows are big with big audience, but it's not the same as putting, for a student to be able to say they did something for SEC Network.
Right.
So it's very impressive to see how these guys have leveraged that to build up their initiative.
I've heard multiple people here call it the cool factor. There's a cool factor now of doing these, whereas maybe a few years ago it was like, this guy's kind of a nerd for working on that. You know what I mean? Next question over here.
This can be for Bennie, Justin, Stan, or Andy. During the winter break, and even a time like now when the spring semester is over, do you have a hard time crewing students? And if so, how do you alleviate that? Do you hire more freelancers? Do you go back to a post-grad? How does that get overcome?
Well, yes, it is a problem, and I started with a lot of freelancers, so that was helpful, and so we have a large enough base there that we can get through, and I think starting this August, we're gonna have a big meeting with our students and just say, hey, you can't be gone for 5 weeks over Christmas. Not everyone gets to take spring break. We expect you to maybe stay if we're doing a softball regional or super regional. not everyone can just go home. That's kind of what's going to be expected. So we'll see how that works. But so both things, yeah, we have some students that can stay, and we're going to ask more to, and we do have 20, maybe more, 25 freelancers.
We supplement greatly at break time with freelancers, but we also have a strong core of students who are all from Atlanta, Birmingham, nearby. So they literally, you tell them, hey, we want you to work 30 events, and they were there. It wasn't much of a struggle to get them to show up, even 2 days before Christmas. They just wanted to work. So I thought it would be more of a struggle, but it helped that pretty much everyone lived in close proximity, and a lot of my students, they just didn't leave. They viewed it as an opportunity to work more events and get better, and that was kind of a shock to me.
Yeah, I'd say oddly enough for us, we have a lot of students from California. I still haven't figured out why they come from California, Alabama, but a lot of them go home during those breaks. Obviously, you see their parents and stuff and family, and so we have a huge problem. It's a huge problem for us. And we try to supplement with full-time staff and freelance as much as we can. If you don't plan ahead with freelancers, you run into them being booked for other events as well. So you just have to have a game plan and really think it through.
Someone right up here. There you go.
Obviously, the addition of the SEC Network broadcasts, it's been a big undertaking. How are you guys balancing the needs of video board and web production with that?
I didn't think we'd have time for that question. Thank you. It's right here. I'll cross it off.
How are you guys balancing that, and do you feel like, is it a 50-50 priority? Is there a push from the administration to go one way or the other? How are you guys dealing with that balance?
I can start with that. That was a great weakness of ours this year. We pretty much neglected for a while our video board shows to the point where it got noticeable. But going into next year, we have 7 facilities with video boards. Some of those facilities have multiple sports that compete in those facilities. So we've really, towards the end of this year, really started ramping up the video board side of things to the point where I have full-time staff members devoted to just one video board like softball, who has 40 home events, and their sole responsibility is the softball video board. But our big thing is trying to build more control rooms to meet the video board needs, because our control rooms pretty much are dominated by SEC Network productions, and we do a lot of local control room shows, which are not how I would like to do them, and that's just me convincing we need more money to build that 3rd, 4th control room that will eventually happen.
I think for us, it's the same challenge. In the beginning, the video board production suffered greatly, and our marketing people are the ones who stepped up to the plate. I don't know if the Learfield person is here, but we're a Learfield school, and said, hey, where are my replays? Because they were actually, counting everything that happened on a video board, and it was probably not more evident than maybe baseball, and baseball has its own challenges as it relates to replay. So for us, obviously, just taking a more active role in how we handle the video board and acknowledging that the video board does still exist. And I think maybe just over the course of the season, we began to balance it out a little bit more, because we were front-heavy thinking SEC Network, and maybe we just thought, since we had a video board at these venues for a long time, that it would even itself out over time. And I just think as the year progressed and we got more comfortable with what we were doing for the SEC Network, then the video board production, worked itself out.
Yeah, I think it's hard for especially administrators to really gauge what you're doing, and it's good to have them over there once in a while in your control rooms, just to have them see what's going on. But just to give you guys an idea, you could have a volleyball and a soccer game at the same time, as well as big screen shows for both of those. So you could really have 4 productions going on at once. All of the coaches want their stuff covered. ESPN certainly likes the content. Of course, we have sponsor obligations for the video board, so there's a lot of things. And we're all sitting back going, we don't know how we're going to do this because we don't have enough stuff to do it. So, I think year 1 was really just get through those events, make sure that SEC Network is moving along, that we're doing good quality productions, and really just get comfortable with our productions, so that we can then, as Andy said, shift gears and now focus on the content for those big screen shows and things like that, and improve equipment. And in fairness to the administrators as well, I don't know that we knew all of what we were getting into as well. So, you know, it's one of those things, it's a constant education process, you know, for those folks approving the money. And
Yeah, it was a huge challenge. The administrators, and none of them are here, so I'm not going to be nice to them. But, they would say, "Well, we spent all this money, and you hired 3 people. Like, what do you mean you can't do all these things?" That's true. So we added an HD. The infrastructure previously was SD for everything, and we took over video boards with our new builds. And so we have a brand new HD basketball video board, which is great. And then we realized, like, well, how are we going to do that?
Right.
So I simply
Need to put something on that board.
we need to put something on that board. So one of my tactics was I took a young reporter I hired and told her that she was producing video boards now. So she's here. You guys can meet her later. But it was a challenge, and so we're still working on better ways to do it. But yeah, you realize, you know, here we go. We're playing basketball. We're debuting this new board, and we don't know who's in the second room because we're doing either a linear show or a plus. Or
Sure. I wanted to get to one more question with you guys, and if we have one more sec, I'll give you a question out there. But so there's estimates that revenue's already going to increase. I think some of the ADs said maybe $5 million this year by 2017 and 18, like $10 million just from the network and everything. How much money you guys will see of that, I guess we'll see. But what's your summer look like near term? What are you guys going to try to do to improve your operations going into next year? What were some of the issues that you had that you're going to try to get out of and try to improve on? And how do you think you will compare from day one last year to once the fall sports start in a few months here? Stan, go ahead and start off.
Well, we're looking at upgrading audio specifically. That's one of the things that doing a linear broadcast, we realized we could probably need to work on a little bit. And so those are the main things. How are we going to get better? I mean, I think we feel a lot better heading in this year than when we did, we turned a football board on, which is pretty scary. We didn't really know if everything would work, and it did. And then the next week we did soccer for SEC Network Plus, and I mean, no idea really personally how that was going to work. And so we're going to feel a lot better. We have a lot more students, as I said earlier. I think we're going to be a lot more organized. But in terms of, I've asked for 1% of that money,
Right.
just for me.
Right. Of course, yeah.
But
You deserve it, Stan.
Well, yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's a battle, and understanding that, hey, you have to support this, and so that's a big mystery. What's going to end up in the budget for next year?
Justin?
yeah, I think for us, we're just going to focus on, you know, improvement of our productions. You know, we feel like we're constantly hiring staff, but you know, we have some staff to hire, but we also, you know, just want to focus on improvement of our productions, you know. And we watch a lot of TV. I know that sounds crazy, but we watch a lot of productions to get ideas, the next cool thing, you know, out there. We want to try to incorporate some of those things in some way. And so it's a really fun thing too for the staff to, you know, have those ideas and try to, you know, do cool things like that, and for the students as well. But that's really our biggest focus. We have a few minor things at each venue that we have to do related to camera positions and, you know, things like that. That maybe would be better for us as far as a best practice kind of thing. But overall, just to focus on better content, better productions, making it a better show.
Great. Andy?
We were very aggressive, and I was told this is what you're going to do. You're going to do every single event on campus, basically. And we had no idea how to do swimming and diving, gymnastics, soccer. So it was kind of like, how do we do this? Well, now we've done it, and we know, okay, these are the mistakes we made and what we purchased in a rush, or decisions that were made prior to, you know, certain people's arrivals. But, okay, how do we go back and fix that and then build on that and make sure we don't make those, I wouldn't call them mistakes because there were a lot of unknowns, so just how do we build off of that, get better, constantly adding equipment, and then the abuse the equipment takes by having all the students who may not know how to work with SMPTE or, single mode fiber and just break stuff constantly. And we don't have a lot of backups, so just building that depth, not only in people, but in equipment, so when we get to a day where, we have, as Justin mentioned, 4 broadcasts, 2 video board shows and 2 SEC network shows, we don't have enough equipment, so just figuring out, just keep building off of that, and then as far as summer, I'll be spending a lot of it working on a video board project. So.
Right. No vacations. Yeah. Benny?
Yeah, I think we also have a few projects, not as big as last year, obviously, with the start of the network. It's basically a matter of going back, looking at all the venues, making sure we have everything in place at those venues to do our broadcast, whether it's the digital or the linear side of the broadcast. As far as facilities are concerned, obviously, I just mentioned that, we're starting construction of our broadcast hub, so that will take some time this summer as we work through that process. We're building a new softball stadium. Next year we'll be hosting the softball tournament, and Rex and his group will come and visit us in a few weeks and tell us everything we need to do to create 2 TV compounds and stages and all the stuff that they want to bring in to do a softball tournament. So we'll be working with that. We just finished the SEC Outdoor Track Championships. We created a compound and got all the connectivity in place to do that. So now, like Andy said, we can do track and field, we think. But we do have everything in place. And then finally, just adding to our staff. We're going to add a production position to our staff this summer, and we hope to add a technical position this fall to our staff as well. So we'll be working through some of those things throughout the summer and early fall next year.
Great. And Jared, you mentioned user groups and that kind of thing. What's your role long-term? What's Ross's role long-term in terms of how the SEC network's going to develop with you guys?
Yeah, I think that's one of the big things we can focus on is helping build the community. So there's a network of people that can connect and share ideas and tips, at least with regard to our products. We also have to keep up with the velocity. There's a big second wave at the SEC network with secondary control rooms or the actual primary control rooms that are finally being built, as well as the other collegiate initiative build-outs going on at the same time. So for us, it's all about making sure we can keep up with the rights agreements or the secondary control rooms being built, and building the community is really going to be the key to make sure that this ecosystem can really help itself, basically. So that's a big goal this year, and work with ESPN to sometimes simplify things. It's there's always an opportunity, especially with the graphics intensive workflows, to see if we can maybe tweak it and make it better every year. So we're going to, of course, meet with them and have some collaboration to potentially simplify things.
Great. I was so close to ending this panel perfectly on time, but Jim Dachman has a quick question in the back. Jim, make it really fast. And these guys too.
And I only have 3 questions. One, sorry if I missed this, but can you guys share how much money the university invested in getting you guys ready? If you can share that. And number 2, who has engineers on staff or is adding engineers?
Lightning round. Go for it. Straight down the line. Stan, go ahead.
We've spent about $2.6 million, and we do have a full-time engineer.
We spent close to 8 or 10 million over the last 3-4 years. 10, okay. Stan says 10. We have 2 engineers on staff, and we actually had one on staff, and then we hired a second one when we started with the SEC Network agreement.
We initially spent 2.5, which became 4, which became 5, 6, 7. I don't even know where we are now. I think we're probably at about 7 million. And our engineer started this week. Thank goodness.
There you go. There you go.
By the end of this calendar year, we probably will have spent somewhere in the $3.5 million range. Hopefully, the news out of the SEC meetings in Destin the next couple of days will be good, so maybe they'll throw some more money our way. As far as an engineer is concerned, we hope to have one on board by the end of the year. We have a great group of engineers available to us on campus and in the surrounding area, so that's what we've been utilizing over the past year.
Cool, guys. Well, the Tech Showcase exhibits are open out here. I encourage you all to visit each of them, not only because they have some cool stuff, but because this event couldn't happen without them. And then, of course, thanks to our panelists. Really appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.